The full-time whistle blows at the Stadium of Light. The scoreboard reads 0-0. Manchester United have not lost, but they have not won either. And in that moment, depending on where you sit as a fan of this club, your reaction probably said everything about how far Manchester United have come this season and how far they still have to go. Let me be clear from the start. This is not a crisis, but it is a conversation. And it's a conversation that touches on the manager, the squad, the summer window, the Champions League, and the permanent job. Everything connected to the future of this football club ran through 90 minutes of football in Sunderland today. So let us get into it properly and analyse exactly what happened, what was said, and what it all means. Before we go deeper, let us understand the context of this match, because context is everything in football analysis. Manchester United came into this game having already secured Champions League football for next season. That is a massive achievement when you consider where this club was just 12 months ago, finishing 15th in the Premier League, 15th, and now they are back in the Champions League. So the pressure was not about survival today. The pressure was about something more subtle. It was about momentum, about squad depth, and about a manager who has done extraordinary things, but whose permanent appointment is still not confirmed. If Manchester United had produced a dominant, convincing performance today, the argument for giving Michael Carrick the job permanently becomes almost impossible to resist. Instead, they produced a flat, goalless draw that raised real questions about the depth of this squad. That is the tension sitting underneath everything we are about to break down. And if you are watching this channel because you want honest, in-depth football analysis, not just headlines, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because on Adam United Analyst, we go beyond the surface. We look at what is actually happening, what it means, and where it leads. Subscribe and stay until the end of this video, because the final section on the summer transfer window and the manager situation is where this analysis gets really interesting. Let us now go through every piece of information available from today, starting with the statistical picture and working through the manager's words, the players' reactions, the pundit opinions, and finally, the transfer landscape. The table since January 17th, 2026. Since Michael Carrick took charge on January the 17th, 2026, Manchester United have collected 33 points from 15 matches. That is 10 wins, and they sit at the top of the form table across the entire Premier League during that period. Bournemouth sits second with 29 points. Manchester City third with 28, and Arsenal fourth with 27 points. Now let me give you my analysis of that. What this table tells you is not just that Manchester United have been winning games, it tells you they have been the most consistent team in the country since mid-January. That is not a small thing. That is a transformation. Carrick inherited a club that was in a deeply difficult position, and he has turned them into the form team of the entire league. When you put those numbers next to the question of whether he should be given the permanent job, the answer from a pure performance standpoint looks very straightforward. But here is where it gets complicated. A form table only tells you part of the story. And today was a reminder of what the other part looks like. Carrick's overall record. The overall numbers under Carrick read as follows: 18 matches played, 12 wins, 4 draws, 2 losses. My analysis of this is simple but important. A win rate of 12 from 18 is genuinely impressive for a manager who came in mid-season to a squad that had clearly been struggling. 2 losses in 18 games is a very low number. The draw rate of 4 is reasonable. These are not the numbers of a caretaker doing a holding job. These are the numbers of a manager building something. The question the board at Ineos must now be asking is not whether Carrick is doing well. It is whether they trust him to take the next step, which is competing in the Champions League with a squad that clearly needs major investment. Sen and Lamens and the statistics. This is one of the most impressive individual data points of the entire match day. Sen Lamens prevented 2.05 expected goals against Sunderland while keeping a clean sheet. That makes it the second highest figure recorded by a Manchester United goalkeeper in a Premier League clean sheet game over the last 10 seasons. Only Andre Onana's 2.17 against Liverpool in 2023 ranks higher. My analysis here. When people talk about Manchester United's best signing this season, the goalkeeper Sen Lamens is emerging as the strongest candidate according to the sentiment from those close to the club. And today's performance backs that up completely. He was not a passenger in a comfortable clean sheet. Sunderland created genuine chances. Lamens was the reason the scoreline stayed 0-0. Without him, this result could easily have been a defeat. That changes the narrative of the entire game. What looked like a quiet draw was actually a goalkeeper's masterclass holding the result together. Jose Mourinho on Carrick and the permanent job. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Jose Mourinho, the man currently managing Benfica, made his position very clear on the Michael Carrick situation. His words were direct and they were pointed. Mourinho stated that Carrick has done more than all the Premier League managers, yet people still question whether he should be given the permanent role. He highlighted that Carrick has beaten the entire so-called Big Six and has collected the most points since taking charge. He argued that the problem at Manchester United has never always been the players or the results, but the decisions. He said the club has too often looked outside for big names and big reputations, but football is about understanding, not reputation. Mourinho's view was that Carrick already knows what Manchester United is. He has been inside the dressing room. He has won everything the club has to offer as a player. He understands what the fans expect when they walk into Old Trafford, and Mourinho's conclusion was firm. Managers with big credentials but no connection to the soul of the club will always struggle. Carrick has something that cannot be taught, which is connection. His final line was this: instead of making another so-called clever decision, maybe the club should make the obvious one and finally trust one of their own. My analysis. Now, I want to be measured here because this is a significant statement from a very significant figure in football. Mourinho is not just any manager saying this. He is a man with deep experience in elite management, someone who has seen from the inside how clubs make decisions and how often those decisions go wrong. His framing of this as a question of trust and understanding, rather than just numbers, is insightful because the numbers already support Carrick. What remains is the board's willingness to back their own man. And Mourinho is essentially calling out a pattern of behaviour at this club that has cost them many times before. That pattern being the habit of going outside for glamour, when the answer was already inside the building. Senne Lammens speaking after the match. After the game, Lammens spoke publicly, and his words revealed a mindset that is extremely important to understand. He said the manager has got the message across clearly. The season is not finished. They have Champions League football secured. Yes, but the squad also wants to finish third in the league. He said they do not want to finish below third. They want to keep the teams behind them at a distance, and he expressed confidence that the whole squad shares that view. My analysis: this is a goalkeeper showing leadership well beyond what you expect from someone in that position. Lammens is not just talking about his own performance. He is communicating the collective ambition of the group, and that matters enormously in football. When a goalkeeper speaks with that clarity of purpose after a goalless draw, it tells you something about the culture Carrick has built. This is a team that has not switched off. They are still competing, still focused, and Lammens is the voice of that focus today. Michael Carrick speaking after the match. Carrick addressed several different aspects of today's result, and I want to bring all of his words together because the full picture is more meaningful than individual quotes. On the result itself, Carrick acknowledged that the Stadium of Light is a tough place to visit. He noted that Sunderland have had a strong home record throughout the entire season. He accepted the point, highlighted the clean sheet as a positive, and acknowledged that Manchester United nearly won the game late on. On the 5 changes he made to his lineup, he was calm and clear. He said it is one game, it is the time of the season, the work has been done throughout the campaign. He made changes today, and he felt the attitude from every player who came in was genuinely good. He said the point was a positive result. He was not expecting a perfect game, and he was firm that this is not something to overthink. On finishing the season, he was focused. He said the squad gave everything this week. The final home game of the season is the next target, and he wants to approach it with full commitment. His message was that finishing the season strongly is important, and that today was a positive note rather than a negative one. My analysis: what I find interesting about Carrick's words today is the balance he strikes between managing expectations and maintaining standards. He does not pretend the performance was brilliant. He does not oversell the result. But he also does not panic, and he does not undermine his players in public. That is a sign of maturity in management. He is protecting his squad psychologically while also being honest that a perfect game was never the expectation. The challenge he faces is that those 5 changes produced the 5 weakest performances, and that is a squad depth issue rather than a tactical failure. Carrick knows that. His comments about attitude suggest he is aware the quality was lacking, but he is choosing to focus on the mentality rather than the execution. Whether that is the right public message or not, it is certainly a calculated one. Carrick on the players who came into the starting 11. Carrick was specific here. He said the players who came in are not on trial. As a team, they could have performed better, but he knows what those players can do. He said everyone contributed in a good way, and he was pleased with the connection, the communication, and the willingness to work for each other. My analysis: the phrase "not on trial" is deliberate. Carrick is signalling to those fringe players that they still have a future at this club, while simultaneously managing the narrative around a performance that was clearly below the starting 11's usual standard. He is protecting the group without pretending everything was perfect. But reading between the lines, the reality is clear. The gap between the first-choice players and the rotation options is significant. And that gap will need to be addressed this summer if Manchester United are going to be competitive in the Champions League. Wayne Rooney's assessment. Wayne Rooney did not hold back. His verdict was direct. He said Manchester United's performance was flat and it felt like an end-of-season game for both teams. When it came to the players who came in for United today, his assessment was blunt. He said they probably did not do enough to prove they should be at the club next season. And he concluded by saying, it will be clear to Carrick that there has to be significant investment in the summer for Manchester United to compete in the Champions League. My analysis. Rooney's words carry weight here because he is not being sensationalist. He is being practical. An end-of-season game where rotated players fail to impress is not just a bad afternoon. It is a data point about squad quality. And when you are about to enter the Champions League, data points about squad quality matter enormously. Rooney is essentially confirming what the performance showed. The depth at this club is not Champions League ready. And if Carrick is going to be the man to take them into Europe, he needs the tools to do it properly. Manchester United forever on squad depth. This post captured a widespread concern among the fan base very clearly. The argument made was that squad depth is nowhere near sufficient for Champions League football. The point was made that signing starters matters, but improving the bench matters equally. When injuries or suspensions hit, as they inevitably will throughout a long season with European football added, the drop in quality becomes severe. Top clubs do not have that problem. And the conclusion drawn was that this summer is enormous for the future of the club, with both the manager decision and the recruitment strategy carrying equal importance. My analysis, this is an accurate reading of the situation. The starting 11 under Carrick has been excellent. The players outside that first-choice group have been a significant step below. In a Premier League season with no European football, you can sometimes manage that. But in a campaign that includes the Champions League group stages, knockout rounds, the Premier League and domestic cups, you cannot rely on 14 players doing everything. You need 20 players who can perform at a high level. That gap is real, and it is significant. Carrick praises Sene Lammens. Specifically, when asked directly about Lammens, Carrick's words were warm and genuine. He described the goalkeeper as solid and calm. He said Lammens has been a big part of the results Manchester United have achieved this season. My analysis, the fact that Carrick singles out Lammens specifically is not an accident. Managers choose their public praise carefully. By highlighting Lammens in this way, Carrick is acknowledging a player who came in and immediately stabilised the most important position on the pitch. The goalkeeper situation at Manchester United had been a concern for some time. Lammens has resolved that concern quickly and effectively. And today's statistics, 2.05 expected goals prevented, confirm that the praise is fully deserved. Transfer news. David Affengruber. This is a rumour, and I want to be very clear about that. It is important to separate confirmed news from speculation. Manchester United are reported to be monitoring David Affengruber, a midfielder currently playing for Elche CF in Spain. A move is described as increasingly likely, given that his contract is entering its final year. Elche CF are reportedly seeking around €30 million for the player. My analysis, this is a rumour at this stage. Nothing is confirmed, no transfer has been agreed, no personal terms have been discussed publicly. What we know is that United are watching a player whose contract situation gives the club potential leverage in negotiations. A player entering the final year of a contract is always in a more vulnerable position commercially, and clubs looking for value in the market will target exactly that type of situation. Whether this particular move materializes is something only time will confirm, but the logic behind the interest is sound if the player fits the profile Carrick needs in midfield. Jose Mourinho and Real Madrid, this is significant contextual information. According to Transfer Insider, Fabrizio Romano, Real Madrid have begun direct contacts over a potential move to bring Jose Mourinho back to the club. Benfica, where Mourinho currently manages, want him to stay at all costs. However, they are aware that talks with Real Madrid are ongoing. The final decision is described as resting entirely with Real Madrid President Florentino Perez, who will decide whether Mourinho returns or not. My analysis. Now, on the surface, this might seem unrelated to Manchester United, but it connects directly to the manager conversation at Old Trafford. Earlier in this analysis, we discussed Mourinho's public support for Carrick and his call for the club to appoint him permanently. If Mourinho is heading to Real Madrid, that removes one potential name from any speculative list of candidates, however unlikely his appointment at United may have been. But more importantly, it reinforces the idea that the elite managerial market is moving, clubs are making decisions, Real Madrid are acting. The question is whether Manchester United will match that urgency or continue to delay the inevitable. Michael Carrick satisfied after scoreless draw against Sunderland. Let me now give you my full analytical breakdown of the broader picture from today's match. The game ended 0-0 at the Stadium of Light. This was Manchester United's first goalless draw of the entire season. The game was described as played at a slow pace, with neither side producing enough quality to deserve the 3 points. Sunderland had begun the brighter of the two teams in the first half. Their striker Brian Brobby caused problems for Lisandro Martinez throughout the 90 minutes, though he was not clinical enough inside the penalty area when it mattered most. United improved after the break and had the better of the second half exchanges, even coming close to a winner in the final stages. Carrick made 5 changes from the team that beat Liverpool 3-2 the previous Sunday. He acknowledged this openly and defended the decision by pointing to the attitude of his players and the stage of the season. The context is essential here. Manchester United secured Champions League qualification the week before this fixture. That objective, which was the primary target for the second half of the season, had already been achieved. Coming to Sunderland, who themselves had successfully survived their first Premier League season since being promoted, was always going to be a low-stakes game in the traditional sense. Both teams had things to be satisfied with heading into the final week. Both teams showed it. But Carrick was emphatic that the season is not over. He wants to finish in third place. He wants the final home game to mean something. And that message has clearly landed with players like Lamens, who echoed it publicly after the match. My analysis of Article 1. The picture this paints is of a manager who is psychologically astute enough to recognise that performances like today happen in football. They do not define a season. What defines a season is the cumulative work over 37 or 38 games. And the cumulative work this season has been extraordinary given where the club was 12 months ago. The clean sheet, the point on the road, the positive mindset heading into the final game. These are the building blocks of a club rebuilding its identity. Carrick knows that, and he is making sure his players know it too. 5 things learned as Manchester United draw 0-0 with Sunderland. Now let me walk through the 5 analytical conclusions drawn from today's match and give you my own view on each one. The first point made was that Adam Heaven should be starting ahead of Lisandro Martinez. The argument here is that Heaven has been performing at a high level and that Martinez's display today was weak. He struggled against Brian Brobby, was poor on the ball, and did not look like the commanding figure we associate with him. The conclusion drawn was that Carrick should start Heaven in the remaining 2 games and set the standard for the following season. My analysis: this is a fair observation. When a younger player has been performing consistently well and a senior player has a poor game, the manager's decision-making becomes a talking point. Martinez has a significant reputation and a proven history, but reputation does not win football matches. If Heaven is the better performing player right now, the argument for starting him carries genuine weight. Whether Carrick agrees is something we will find out in the final game. The second point was that Joshua Zirkzee is on the chopping block this summer. The description of his performance was harsh but specific. He was described as sluggish in his movement and inaccurate with his passing, including one notable moment where Manchester United had 5 attackers against 3 defenders and the opportunity was wasted because of his decision-making. The conclusion was that his 2 seasons without being a regular starter have confirmed what his performances suggest. It is time for the club to sell him in the summer. My analysis: this is a difficult situation for any player and any club. Zirkzee arrived with significant expectations and has clearly not delivered at the level required to hold a starting position over 2 seasons. Today's performance in a game where he was given an opportunity was not the answer the club needed. If the intention is to compete in the Champions League, every player in the squad needs to be capable of performing at that level. A player who cannot be trusted to take a clear chance is a liability in European football. The third point was that Ineos have a significant amount of work to do this summer. The argument made was that the 5 changes produced the 5 weakest individual performances, confirming that the gap between the starting 11 and the rotation options is very large. The assessment was that 5 or 6 signings at minimum are required if Manchester United are genuinely challenged for the title, rather than simply participate in the Champions League. My analysis: This is the most significant structural point of the entire analysis. Carrick has been working miracles with a squad that has clear limitations. The starters are excellent. The depth is insufficient. That is not a coaching problem. That is a recruitment problem. And it is a problem that Ineos must resolve before next season begins. At 5 or 6 signings at the required quality level represents a major financial commitment. But without that investment, the Champions League campaign risks being a difficult experience rather than a competitive one. The fourth point concerned Bruno Fernandez and the Premier League assist record. With 4 games remaining before today, Fernandez needed 2 assists to break the record. He drew a blank for the second consecutive game. He now needs 2 assists from the final 2 games to break it, or 1 to match it. Against Sunderland, United created very little, and Fernandez had almost no opportunity to provide assists in a game that was so low on quality and creativity. My analysis: records are interesting, but they should not be the primary focus for a player of Fernandez's quality. The more pressing concern is that United created virtually nothing against a mid-table team today. That is not entirely Fernandez's fault, when the personnel around him were below the required level. But the assist record conversation is now under real pressure, and the final home game will determine whether history is made or not. The fifth and final point was about Carrick's own situation. The analysis drawn was that the permanent job is almost certainly his, but performances like today create doubt. United were reportedly close to confirming his appointment before the Nottingham Forest game. Another underwhelming result could introduce hesitation in the minds of the Ineos decision-makers. The suggestion made was that Carrick should either get better performances from his available players or turn to academy players to demonstrate faith in the club's future. My analysis: I think this is the most complex point of the 5. On one hand, Carrick's record is exceptional, and today was a rotation game with fringe players near the end of a successful season. Reading too much into it risks being unfair to a manager who has genuinely transformed this club's trajectory. On the other hand, Ineos are running a business and a football operation simultaneously. How this club looks in its final 2 games will influence decisions about investment, recruitment, and long-term vision. Carrick's job is not just to win matches. It is to demonstrate to the board that he is the right long-term leader. Today was not a convincing demonstration of that. But one game does not change. 18 matches of evidence. The overall case for Carrick remains very strong. So let me bring this all together for you. Today, Manchester United drew 0-0 at Sunderland. The result was fine. The performance was not. The squad depth was exposed. The goalkeeper was outstanding. The manager remained calm and measured in his public response. The players showed enough collective spirit to take a point at a tough venue. And the conversation about the summer, about the permanent manager, about investment and recruitment continues with even more urgency after 90 minutes that reminded everyone what this squad looks like without its best 11 players. The situation is this: Manchester United are a club in genuine transition. The direction of travel is positive. The foundations being laid by Michael Carrick are solid, but the building itself needs significant work. And the summer of 2026 will be one of the most important in the club's recent history, not just because of who they sign, but because of who they choose to lead them. The evidence supports Carrick. The numbers support Carrick. Even Jose Mourinho supports Carrick. Now it is time for Ineos to make the decision that the evidence demands. That is the full picture from Sunderland. Thank you for watching Adam United Analyst. If this kind of deep, honest analysis is what you want, please subscribe. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on whether Carrick should get the permanent job, and I will see you in the next video.